We'll open up the workshop at this point. We had a good meeting earlier with our TDC council. We had one of our members that had to leave, but we'll kind of pick up where we left off. Matt, you want to kind of open up this workshop and kind of share what we're doing and what our expectations are?
Yeah, sure. Certainly most appreciate you all being here. So the point of today's workshop was really to provide the council an opportunity just to, sit back in a little bit more of a casual setting, as casual as it can be behind a dais, but to get together outside of a traditional council meeting and have a general discussion just about, topics of importance and ways that the council can basically, the way the council can work better with the BCC and the partners and even ourselves in the tourism department. So we put together a pretty loose agenda there, and that's just to generally, kind of guide some of the conversation. So if you look at that agenda, the first topic we put on there is meeting format, I believe is what I put on there. Paper wherever I put it, sorry, misplaced it, but meeting format, right? So what we wanted to talk to the council about and what we wanted some discussion and feedback on, over the past few meetings, there has been some conversation of, should we meet more? Should we meet less? Should we have standing workshops or things of that nature to involve our stakeholders? So really, really just wanted to get some, input on the council for what they feel their needs are. So state statute does dictate that we meet at a minimum once a quarter. So we've always, at least in my tenure, I shouldn't say always, in my tenure, we've always met, every other month, and that's kind of the frequency we meet now. So I think, what I would open up for discussion is just whether, we want to look at the idea of meeting more frequently, or if we think, the way forward is just having regular standing workshops or opportunities for the partners to convene. So that's really kind of that first topic there, if we want to start a general discussion there, maybe.
Well, let's open that up to the stakeholders. Are you guys getting what you need in a timely manner? Do you feel like we need to meet more often, more with greater frequency, or is every other month seem to be kind of a good balance? Thoughts?
I feel like this conversation, this meeting, right, this public workshop was kind of born, at least this is my perspective, was born out of 6 months ago, 4 months or so ago. I think whenever we had our last meeting, or maybe the one before that, there was probably some frustration amongst the council members. We had noticed a lot of things that were kind of popping up all at once. One was we're not getting a lot of notice on agenda items. We're not getting background information on agenda items to be able to review. We're recognizing that a lot of times we're kind of getting put on the spot to make a snap decision on something without an opportunity to, one, either review it, or two, have a kind of a conversation as a council. And I think we recognized that we potentially needed an opportunity to have more casual conversation, right? I think we recognized that Micah was behind a lot of this, right? And it's too bad that, he's kind of moved on, because I think this would have benefited him, and I know that was part of his frustration. But, one of the things I think I recognized was that I don't know what half of us believed, right? I don't know what half of us, saw as the vision for the future of tourism in Walton County. And I think, for me, I think this meeting or this format is a couple things. Maybe it's potentially an opportunity for us to get to know each other a little bit better, have some casual conversation, maybe see more information brought to the council. I know we're just an advisory board, but there's a wealth of information here. There's a wealth of knowledge. Between, I'm just looking everywhere, we've got 100+ years worth of, involvement in tourism in Walton County, between everybody standing up here. And Downs and St. Germain is fantastic. But we spend a lot of money on them to tell us what I think a lot of us already know. And some of their information's, we're talking about 2023 information here, right? There's a lot changed in the last 18 months, right? I guess my point is, I think we're underutilizing what this council can be. I think there's also some things recently that, I would have hoped to have seen come before the council, right? this new vendor beach, right, program, whatever you want to call it, that affects tourism in a tangible way, right? And Matt, when you and I spoke on it, I kind of found out about it, secondhand. I kind of asked, hey, what's the tourism department's opinion on it?
Sure.
They're like, well, we don't really have an opinion. I'm like, well, and maybe we need to spend more time, on this topic. We also changed the way that taxes are submitted. And I think with a little bit of conversation, I'm sure y'all are suffering through the same things we suffered, trying to get those straightened out.
Trying to get you paid.
Yeah, but we could have avoided some of those things, right, if that topic had come to the council, prior for just some casual conversation. So all that to say, I kind of see this format as an opportunity for us to do some of those things. I also know that there's some people in the general public that would love an opportunity to bring things for more casual conversation, to learn more, right, but also to maybe to submit some things for conversation. That didn't answer the question you initially asked, was, hey, what does the meeting format look like going forward? I think we're meeting probably often enough on the formal TDC meetings, but I think having supplementing those with one of these once a quarter, or every couple of months. I don't want to double our meetings, unless they're valuable. But I think if we use this format in a way that can bring the general public in, to have a little more organization, if we can talk openly, if we can get more information in advance, have opportunity to think it through, talk it through, I think it's going to make the whole council more effective. And that's my hope.
Perfect.
So that was a long answer, but that's
Any
kind of my perspective
suggestions,
on it.
direction? Any suggestions?
I like the concept of what we're talking about. I don't know, everybody else may feel totally different on that. But I might suggest we continue to meet, every other month or so like we have been, but also supplement that with once a quarter workshop, just kind of depending upon what items are coming up.
Well, and I know for me, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse because I've been saying it for a number of years now. Somehow in the transition over the last several years, it's very, very, the TDC of today is light years different than the TDC that I sat on before. There were no issues relative to tourism that did not come before the TDC first for their recommendation. Then we made a recommendation. Yes, there were a couple of times the BCC did not go with our recommendation, but those were pretty, we'd have a joint meeting. It just started to feel like, and this is not a criticism, I hope the tourism department team knows you don't have a bigger fan than me, but we come to these meetings and I feel almost bad for you guys. I know how when I get ready for my annual meeting for my homeowners and my shareholders, a lot of work goes into that. So I feel like you guys are having to set up a presentation for us where it maybe do that twice a year, where we really go through what all the initiatives are. But then, other than that, the topics coming before this board are things, and I would list that. I know my good friend Kelly Rich, I see her out in the audience, who is a vacation rental operator, but I've put together what's called a Rental Owners Alliance, Professional Rental Owners Alliance. Royal, of course, Brian can't come personally, but it was really to focus on this 30A teen issue we're having, and it's really evolved from that. 360 Blue is about to sign, and when they do, it'll represent over 2,500 vacation rentals. Our meeting literally this past week was almost this much on the teen issue, and it was this much on who is the voice of tourism in this county. And I said to them, we've got to turn that back around to be the TDC. But guys, the struggles, I listed the new software, the software for the bed tax, how we're remitting. This is game changing stuff, and the amount of time it's taking. That we are reporting now by house at a county level. Short-term rental ordinance. There are so many things that everybody is on board. All of these people are your rule followers. They're all on board, but there's so many things that need to be changed. I did agree the beach vending, having at least been able to give our opinion on that issue, because I don't think anybody really made because it's now over with code, they're not connecting the impact to tourism. I've heard the rumblings of the Cessna Landing discussion. Again, if I'm not mistaken, well, I know it's on the presentation today, that's a tourist-owned, TDT-owned asset, and so I just think there's a lot of guidance and feedback that we could give. So I think for me, to see some of these issues that are deeply, are really impacting our partners, come here first so that we can at least give good, solid feedback on what's being considered.
Good.
Thank you, but you're right. But the county commission, the makeup now, I think is a little more receptive to the voice of what this advisory council says. So I think we're subjected to who's on the county commission. The TDC, they're county employees. One of our staff members was at Destin last night on charging a fee for condos. They already charge a huge fee for houses, and they talk about code enforcement, and I go, well, condos, they enforce their own rules. In the city of Destin, water sewer's private, fire's private, sheriff's private. So they don't have anything but a huge staff. But Newman Daly's representative, Ocean Reef, we're just looked at as a source of income by the elected officials there, maybe one. And we're the pipeline, we're the money. And so, but now in Walton County, when I first was asked to serve on this board by 2 county commissioners, I was real hopeful, but they never asked for any advice, and we're the ones that are pretty knowledgeable on tourism. But I do feel the makeup of the county commission is serving the citizens, all the citizens of Walton County, much better, not just tourism.
So going back to the solution or suggestion, how would that work? Because I do think that it would be very helpful to have the workshop, you know, and for other bed tax collectors to come, or us to discuss what's coming before the BCC. But what is that procedure for us to understand what's coming up in enough time, present that, and then be able to provide those kind of recommendations? And I guess thinking through what that timeline is, and then that might be more so of the answer of how many workshops you would be able to do.
Well,
Does
and
that make sense?
I don't know if we need to, yes, it makes sense. I'm thinking through here. I don't know if we need to introduce more workshops, or we need to change what a TDC meeting looks like, and then the issues that used to come before the TDC are just coming before us in the meetings, and then we're having dialogue like this about them. What we used to do too is we would have a full-day strategic planning session, a full day. You might as well mark your calendars out, and basically, because it's kind of shocking, but I'm sitting here thinking, did we not approve the budget? Because we absolutely should approve the budget.
And you all did.
But we've got to, but we would go through that budget. We knew exactly what was in it. And I just feel like it feels a little bit out of control compared to how it was 5-6 years ago. And it just feels like everything just happens, and we're kind of on the back end of it, if that makes sense.
But it feels like we're just here to rubber stamp things,
We are.
being totally
The
candid,
budget,
right?
I mean, we can look at it and maybe have a question. We're not allowed to make the budget.
No, sir, you do have the ability to weigh in on it. Just because the BCC can choose to override you does not mean you don't have the ability to weigh in.
Okay.
And if you set, and so let me be very clear, the misconception there that's come up, and it's certainly not just you, Mr. Taylor, I don't mean to single you out on this, but that's one of the questions I get quite a bit, so probably for some of our new council members, it's a good comment for me to add in. The TDC's role is to set the plan. And I think at times, some of our prior executive directors took a position in recent years, maybe certainly not probably going back as far as Amy's talking about, that you set the plan and the budget's this entirely separate animal. Well, the two are linked. And the disconnect, perhaps, to Ms. Coble-Wise's point, is and you say it was a full-day session. I remember a couple times when you were on there was actually 2 full days back to
Exactly right,
back.
it was 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Now that I think
2
about it.
full days of 8 to 10 hour sessions that we would sit down there and do that in a conference room or in a banquet hall. And then what would happen is that was always in late January, early February, so around this time of year. And so then we would have initial budget discussions would start March, April, so that when the county budget scrub process started in June, the council had already aligned the budget documents they were having staff prepare to that strategic plan. So it was a very sequenced process. But you may not have ever gotten to the granular line items there. What's lost though, Mr. Taylor, and I think to her point is, if you had that first step into the second step into the final approval of the budget, that's where you get that input. So while no, I've never sat here and watched TDC council go line by line through a budget, it's because it's been built over a 4-month window when they were doing it that way originally. And that persisted for quite some time, and then it ultimately did fall off.
Well, no, except when the TDC does a budget, they'll look and say, did we bring in 56 million last year? Okay, so you budget, it's not a budget, it's more a grant, because you make sure, however you move it around, it comes to 56 or 60 million. A private company isn't gonna do that.
So let me say, one thing
So
we did.
can we say, instead of saying, well, we spent 20 million in this department last year, in this bucket, we don't get the chance, we'll say, let's not do that. Let's spend 10 million and put 10 million in a
You
future
do now.
reserve.
You do now, Mr. Taylor. Certainly, when you first sat on the board, our tourism plan that was approved by ordinance, that predated your service on the board and went through, Mr. Algren's predecessor, into his first couple times. When we were looking at revising those plans, our plan looked like what several other TDCs at the state do, and they say, we'll spend between $10 million and $15 million on this part of the plan. We'll spend $40 million and $50 million on this part. And it was these tight buckets of money. We have attempted to change that, and what we now do is by percentage. So when you draft the plan, it's saying a range of percentages or how you're choosing to allocate. That's not the state statute pie chart. That doesn't apply to us in this case. It is your own self-imposed pie chart for where those are. But it doesn't mean that you cannot, off the top, say, we're not going to spend 100% of the money. If you want to put money to reserves, that is certainly appropriate. And if the situation is we want to start at a position where 20 or 25% of our money is held into reserves, and we're going to budget those buckets for the remaining 80% of our funds and see what happens, you can do that in a heartbeat. And that is really where this was when we were talking about strategic plan before, because I remember part of the strategic planning sessions, and Amy will certainly correct me if I'm just wildly out of line here. I remember there being a lengthy session at least on one of the 2 days, but in every year we did it, where we talked about the proper reserve funding, not just for storms, but for events that, because Amy came on there right after oil spill, right around the time I did. Okay, what happens if there's another oil spill? What happens if so how do we account for this? And so the entire discussion was, let's start with enough money in reserve that we're not spending everything we get. And so if that's what this council wants to do, the starting point of that is the plan, because if it's not in the plan, the budget can't align. So you can do that. It's just, we've got to start earlier and work through the plan to get there.
Well, and as we talk through it, and I listen to what you're saying, it reminds me of things, but that's what I would have said, is back in that day, your regular meetings were a lot less heavy lifting, because you did this heavy lift, you put a plan in place, and then you had a very competent, capable team to execute on the plan. And so they execute the plan, and then really you come to your regular meetings, and it's just like, I don't know, the signage, the big blue signage. It would be adding a dot to the Gulf Place map. It would be things that the public was passionate about. And, but it was more decisions like that. And then, to your point, once a year, we would come in, and all of you would tell us, okay, council, this is what we told you we'd do. Here's our report on what we did. And so that meeting was usually once a year. That feels like what almost every meeting we come to is, if that makes sense.
So what do we do to become more fruitful, or to make these meetings more fruitful and be more efficient? How do we go?
You being here is going to make the meetings more fruitful.
Thank you.
A county commissioner, the way,
How do we get back to, like, when you said, hey, there was a time when the wheel spun efficiently and things
Well, I think
worked?
we're gonna have to, first of all, I think everybody's gotta understand that this is actually a big time commitment. And I was hesitant, I was asked to try to get back on once before, and I just said, I just can't. The first thing I would point out to all of you, and please don't allow me to step on toes, it's not intentional, is that you're the face of tourism. And so when we have an annual meeting, we've got to be in attendance. When we have Perfect in South Walton, we need to try very hard to be in attendance. We need to start encouraging our partners that if you'll bring the issue to us, we're at least willing to go to the BCC and say, all right, this is, you know, what we think, this is what we're hearing from the tourism partners. And I think we'll find them, in many cases, willing to listen. I think all of us agreed, finally, we had to have a short-term rental ordinance. But I get that's not a marketing function, or it's not building or acquiring new land, but it is greatly impacting our partners, and we have an obligation to represent them. So I think we have to go back, to answer your direct question, I think we have to go back and commit to a strategic planning session, to building a budget off of it, to understanding that we as a group are signing off on that strategic plan and that budget, and then you guys have to go and execute it, and then as decisions and issues come up in the local community, that's what needs to be on this agenda each meeting, is my opinion.
And so that was helpful, having that strategic plan.
Very helpful. And a lot of the public attended.
Okay, can we kind of put that back on the table?
Yeah, so and the timing actually works out, you know, kind of well in the sense that, you know, we're very close to executing our contract for our next strategic plan. The execution of that will be on the next BCC agenda. So as soon as we get that contract signed by both sides, you know, we're going to dig deep into the strategic planning process. This is our 2026 through 2030 strategic plan. So everybody at this dais, in addition to, you know, county commissioners and community stakeholders, are going to be actively involved in that strategic planning process.
Okay, and as far as building the budget, is there a way that this board can become more of a participant in that exercise?
Absolutely, Commissioner. The first step of that's the strategic plan and setting the plan on what we want to do, and then having staff bring you the budget per those categories of the plan. Again, we're not getting down to, okay, we're going to spend $500 on pens versus, you know, $1,000 on magnets. We're not talking about that granularity level. We're talking about, we're going to allocate 35% of our resources towards category X. Well, what's that going to look like, in bringing that back to the board at an early enough time to talk about how that spend looks, so that you're not just getting a fully completed budget. What's happened now is there's a gap between, there's an adopted ordinance that the TDC had a hand in, and the TDC staff just bringing you, and by the way, this is what they were told to do, so I want to take up for staff for a moment. They were told to do this. Bring us a budget that conforms to that. And so they're doing exactly what they were asked to do. But this council has every right to ask, and more importantly, it is your statutory obligation to go through that plan and adopt and develop the tourism plan. And if you are not comfortable, so Mr. Taylor, to your point, I want to go forward again. There is a statutory obligation that if you believe the expenditures being made in that plan, or even if they're approved by the BCC and this council disagrees, you do have a remedy. It is to go to the DOR. That's what the response is, to send a notice to the DOR, and we've done that. In my tenure here, we have done that. We've sent a notice that we were concerned about the administrative surcharges that were being passed through county admin and the clerk's office to the TDC exceeded the actual cost incurred. And we sent that to the BCC and DOR and renegotiated those terms in response to it. So we'll have that opportunity.
Okay, so we feel pretty comfortable about maybe moving towards a newer format where we meet a couple more times a year, or is it more important to get that strategic plan session, that strategic planning session, whether it takes 1 day, 2 days, or do that and then have a couple of more meetings? Do you find that within the hustle and the bustle of the summer season, is that when you need updates, or is it in the downtimes that you feel like maybe some of the grind work should be done, or some of those discussions?
I think following the calendar plan that Clay outlined, where, again, it's just but we're moving ourselves to proactive, we're putting the horse before the cart, we're moving, so I think you gotta go in the months where you gotta, the strategic plan has gotta be finalized so that you guys have time to bring us back a budget based on the strategic plan that we signed off on. And then I think that I think going every other month is certainly fine, with the other issues that typically come before us. You can always call a special meeting, but I really think it has to start from a timing perspective of with the strategic plan. And then the strategic plan, though, I hear you're saying we're doing one for 26 through 30, but we need to look at that and meet on that annually, I think. Just to see, okay, to your point, a lot's changed in 2 years. So this industry changes quick, and we need to be dynamic and be able to, to react and change with it.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, is there a desire, I would guess, after we go through this next strategic plan cycle to maybe shorten that window? Maybe not do a 5-year plan, but maybe do a shorter window on that? I mean, I know you're speaking for yourself,
Yeah,
but.
and I'm never opposed. I think a longer-range plan is always good. I just think you have to be looking at that long-range plan every single year, so it's not like you step away from it and say, this is the 5-year plan, and we're not gonna look at it
Sure.
until 5 years. I think every single year, we have an obligation to sit down and reassess where, at first and foremost, how much have we accomplished, and then secondly, are we still on the right path, and are we still focused on the right things?
And I would agree, and I think what we probably owe to you, internally, we have sat down and we go through that strategic plan, and we look at every goal that we set in that plan, and we say, okay, have we met that goal? Have we not met that goal? What do we still need to push forward to accomplish what we had set forward? So I think what we probably owe to you all is to bring that during a TDC meeting.
Yeah, I agree. I think the rhythm of the meetings is fine. I think the frequency of the meetings is fine. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's being proactive versus reactive. Just understanding what's out there to discuss, using our time a little bit more efficiently.
Well, and I think one thing that might be able to help guide, Matt, is you're living this, eating it, sleeping it, breathing it, so is your team. If a tourism issue is coming before the BCC, and you think you need to at least let us know, it's really kind of strange to be on the TDC and then realize, oh, wow, I should be at the BCC meeting today because that's coming onto the
Yeah.
agenda. So I think it's important that that going back to, let's kind of all, maybe that's what kind of our mantra for the next year is proactive, proactive, proactive. And just say, hey, are you aware that this is on the agenda? Because that gives us then an opportunity to plan to be there to speak, should we feel like we need to.
I think
Sure.
the commissioners would be appreciative,
Oh, I agree.
too, of us there if we want to speak on a topic, because it'll help them gain information or perspective that they may not have on that subject.
I'd also suggest that we develop some kind of mechanism to allow, I know that there's opportunity for public comment after every topic, right, at the end of every meeting, but I think it'd be nice to have some kind of mechanism for, I guess, maybe some more awareness of public concern over tourism-related topics, especially from bed tax collectors. If I'm being totally honest, I think the most underrepresented portion of our community right now is bed tax collectors, right? That's our job here, right?
Agreed, and a lot of that.
But none of the bed tax collectors
They want
out
the
there that
money,
I
but
know
we're seen as the problem in the
trust
community.
that we've got their back, right?
Well, and I'll
that's our whole
certainly-
goal.
Yeah, and I'll take some responsibility. We need to make sure that we're communicating to our constituents. A lot of the time is, we just need them to show up, because even though I stand up and say I'm representing, now I can legitimately say 2,500 short-term rentals, the loudest voice in their ear is the local population who has all the concerns and issues. And I think if you stand up and give a balanced perspective, even the locals understand better. Like, I see so much out there, I know you guys do too, then I just go, God, that's so inaccurate. And, I'm not a comment on social media type person, but it's just, misinformation is everywhere we turn.
Yeah, and I agree. And what I would maybe add in is, help us help you. I couldn't begin to tell you how much time and effort our entire leadership team has put into reaching out to our bed tax collector partners and saying, hey, we're trying to revamp this initiative. We'd love to start hosting regular bed tax collector meetings. We made a very, very forceful push on that not very long ago, and it was crickets, and I understand that people are busy and people, have things to do. I totally get it. We all have things to do. But, from our standpoint, sometimes it's hard to hear that the bed tax collectors want to be heard and they don't feel like they're being heard, but they don't respond when we reach out to them for their input. So if you all can help us, maybe find a mechanism to reach them where they're willing to actually be participants, we'd love that, because, we introduced the idea of what we were just calling round tables or small groups, right? And we reached out to every single bed tax collector in our database and said, hey, here's what we're looking to do, here's kind of the concept, we want to work with you, we want to hear the issues and the topics that are of concern to you, let's get together. We'd set times, we'd set dates, we'd send out requests for RSVPs. People would RSVP and either not show up or just not even respond to us. So, we're open ears in terms of how, we can get some of these, folks who maybe don't feel like they're being heard involved. Additionally, we're having internal conversations about, looking at like breakfast opportunities or after hours opportunities where we can partner with some of our local businesses or even some of our bed tax partners to utilize their space to bring in the public for just, informational opportunities for them to meet with us, for them to talk to them and kind of hear, what they have to say. So we're all open ears there.
Well, guess what? We have to remit sales tax to the state of Florida. The state of Florida, you talk about on the returns, they call me, Ocean Reef, a partner. I'm not their partner. I'm not their partner at all. It's a law. We better remit that on time or look out. So you can ask me or ask somebody that's a bed tax collector, what do we think? What's it matter? We do not, your county employees, and you spend the 60 million that the bed tax collectors send in. We don't have, you say, what do you feel about that? Or what do you feel? Well, most of us that are in private enterprise, we don't have that luxury of saying, well, I don't know how I feel. Who cares how we feel? We have to be successful, and we have to hopefully send in lots of money to the TDC, and if we are, that means we're doing very well ourselves. But we don't. Input isn't something, we can use this as a bully pulpit, that's fun. But
I was gonna say, from years of trying to organize people, it's very hard to get them to attend, especially because they're running their business. And so depending on what time of the day it is, where it's located, how much notice. But I do think that it's important that this group, it starts out being more proactive in sending information out. And I think potentially having a strategic plan of, and goal of having more input in the future will start by us being more representative and letting them know what's coming before the BCC, providing some of that input when those issues may arise. But I think we've got to get back to the formula that you guys had just alluded to from previous years. And then being a proactive voice and sending out that information will build more trust from our partners and from the bed tax collectors, and then potentially get the input. But I mean, I've sat in how many meetings when it's in the Destin area, not because y'all are not there, but, and representative other bed tax collectors who won't show up. But I think that it's also a part of what our role is, and if we continue to send information and then we set those goals. And to your point, Amy, of having 5 years, I feel strongly about having 5 years, but we need to make sure we know what those deliverables are each year, building up to that 5 year. Because in our businesses, we do all the same things. I have 5-year goals, but quarterly, I'm checking those consistently to make sure I'm on track.
well, we're appointed by the county commissioners, so as a group, we can't be a PAC. We can't be a political action committee. So what's going to happen, and what has to happen, is the bed tax collectors have to be a PAC. They have to be a public action committee. And that way, all the things that are of a big concern to the bed tax collectors can be publicized, public, and then that group can also come before the Board of County Commissioners. But we as a group aren't allowed to even do that.
I think going back to the original question, quarterly, so my suggestion would be, and this is obviously not a motion situation, I think, right? Correct? It's more.
No motions in a workshop.
Okay, so, but my suggestion would be that going back, when's the strategic plan set out for the next?
So, right, we'll have an agenda item at the next BCC meeting to execute that contract, and then we'll send it to the consultant for signature, and then we'll get that process rolling as soon as we execute the contract.
So I would suggest then even with staff and maybe with Amy or with Clay, who've had previous engagement to a more fruitful, set up an agenda that maybe we piggyback and replicate what that was for the same strategic plan. We continue the quarterly meetings, and then I think that we need to figure out how we work with the BCC so that as agenda items are being discussed within any agency, so land planning and code, whatever that may be, that we're aware of that and that we send that information out to our bed tax collectors proactively of what's happening. So it's not just calls that are being made, but to the database. And then we figure out, do we need to have special meetings as it relates to that? But I do feel very strongly that someone from this group probably needs to give testimony or during any times of public comment when those issues arise in front of the BCC.
Well, what was it? One county commissioner's talking about banning rentals north of 98. I don't know, I wasn't asked what my thoughts were on that. I'm sure you weren't, North of 98's a big thing.
Well, they can't, I mean,
And,
that's
of course,
against
we
state
said, why
statute.
not go to a business license? And that way the county has 100% control of everything. So if you walk in there and say, I need a business license because I want to rent my house, and then they would look at the map, well, where's your house? You'd have to have a business license, and then they'd say, I'm sorry, that's a historical residential neighborhood, so you can't rent your house, no Airbnb, no. And, so you don't, if somebody on the county commission is just talking about banning rentals north of 98, you would think conversations might be, how do bed tax collectors feel? And maybe show them another perspective. Sandestin Resort's north of 98, but it's a planned development, not obviously. But other places, people are renting houses in neighborhoods that they shouldn't be renting. But they're in the county, and they're not in a subdivision or a homeowners association. And so they're getting away with these 30 houses that sleep 30 people on Forest Shore Drive. Same thing on the business license. If you're renting a pontoon boat, you go down and you get a business license and you say, oh, you want to rent a pontoon boat? Where do you keep your pontoon boats? Well, I keep them in my front yard. No. And then you go, okay, if you have a pontoon boat and you're renting it, where are you putting the boat in the water? Well, guess what? On 30A, the public paid for a park in Hogtown, Cessna Landing. Why should I be allowed to run a business at the taxpayer and the public's expense? You don't know where I'm keeping my pontoon boat, and then I'm going down to Cessna Landing and preventing you from launching your boat because I've rented 5 or 6 pontoon boats. The county, of course, should say no commercial ventures are allowed in a public park like that because it was public funds and it's for the public. Our charter boat in Destin of $2,000 a month we paid to be a legitimate business, and you had a place to park, and so the business license, make it free, but then the county would have 100% control of what people in the county. You won't see jet skis in people's front yard, pontoon boats in front yard, people on Shore Drive having a commercial laundry in their garage, and this is all over the county. People are now renting Airbnb on Bay Grove Road. If you go across the bridge to Freeport, go down Bay Grove Road, Grove Lane, music, Airbnb, well, business license. It's so easy, it's so simple to regulate all these angst that neighborhoods are feeling. That's all. Bye.
I bought purposefully in a non-rental neighborhood that does not have an HOA. And I mean, I did that because I got 2 jet skis that sit right next to my house. And
But you're not renting them out to
That's, oh, no, no, no.
somebody.
But again, I think when you make, I think we
You
also
can
gotta
have
be
them in
kind
your
of
yard, they're not
accountable
renting
for
them.
choices. But Cessna Landing is TDT funded, correct?
It was, and it's maintained that money.
That's what I thought we saw today. So see, it's odd. I feel very, very differently about Cessna Landing. I think if tourism dollars paid for it and it's a service to tourists, I don't see the angst over being able to launch boats there. And
Because they're a commercial entity, they're running, their business model is renting to people and using that launch to where no one else can use it. No, if
So
you're
my
a
guest
commercial
wants to
entity,
rent a
you should
boat.
make sure you have a place for people to come and get on the boat.
okay, so my guest wants to rent a boat. I just send them to Destin. I guess is the best offer I've got for
Well,
him.
you shouldn't send them to a county park. These people in business should be arranged to have their boats in a marina. And be
Boy, I wish
paying.
we could have a
I
marina.
pay,
Can
Ocean
somebody
Reef
arrange
pays,
that?
we're brick and mortar, we pay, Sandestin pays, all of us are legitimately in business, we pay, and these are pirates that are running around renting stuff. And then using a county facility, they should be not allowed to be in a county facility if they're commercial, if they're a business. Get the business license.
So
get
if
the
it's just for locals only, then why didn't tourism dollars fund it to begin with, would
I
be my
have no
concern.
idea. I knew right away when they did all that, who's gonna use it all the time. Just like our parking lots. If our parking lots, everybody that lives in that area is gonna use our parking lots unless we come up with a system where they have to pay to keep their car in there. If you build a parking lot on 393 or going down to Gulf Place, you can't let all those residents be using that TDC parking lot. So it has to be shut down. You have to make sure that anybody that pulls in there has to pay.
Well, I mean, we have no overnight parking signs on the county lots now, and that's pretty well enforced. I just only know because of Seaside's limited parking
Well,
and people
a
trying to use
commercial
it.
business, if I'm trying to rent something, I should not be allowed to use a county park as my business location. We had a county commissioner selling shrimp on 331 years ago, Billy McLean. He used 331, tied up the boat. He wasn't out catching shrimp. Well, finally they go, wait a second. This is, you're in business. It's a business location. You can't be on 331. So I'm all for people renting a pontoon boat, but do like the rest of us. Pay to put it in a slip somewhere.
I know it feels like we're on a really extraneous topic, and we kind of are, but I don't, at least for me, I don't want to understate the importance of this conversation, right? Because for the first time, I get a bigger glimpse into Tim's vision and Amy's vision into what tourism looks like for the future of Walton County. And I think that's important, even if we're talking about boat launch, right?
Yeah, and I just
And I think
think,
these are the kind of conversations that would benefit this council that we're not otherwise able to have.
Right.
yeah, and I think the community, to a great degree, I think we've lost sight of tourism-owned, everybody just seems to think it's all a big pot of tax money. And so it's not tourism-owned assets were allowed to be built with tourism funds because they were to benefit tourism. And listen, I'm a local, I love it here, I want our locals to be happy, I want to be a good neighbor, all of those things. But I just think that's so odd to me, a tourism-owned asset like Cessna Landing to be told, I mean, I just don't know how it's benefiting tourism.
Well, Cessna Landing, there used to be a hotel down there years ago. The TDC spent money improving Cessna Landing, but that was always been a county park. It's not a TDC park. TDC just spent money improving it, and guess who gets to use all those improvements? Commercial operators that are renting pontoon boats. They're lined up. It's a big deal. It's become a really big issue, how upset residents are that they can't put a
No, I
boat
see
in.
it, I see the issue out
But
there.
that somewhat answers your question on where the tourism component comes from, because they're renting to people that are vacationing here.
Well, that would be,
And
it
they're
would have
keeping the
been,
money, and you're not even charging a commercial operator. In Destin, if you're trying to launch a boat, it's not free.
agreed, but what I'm trying to do, and I'm looking at my guests and their experience, I want to give them everything I possibly can to be able to do in Walton County.
They should.
If they can rent a boat, great. If they can golf, great. This is all part of the experience of what drives people here and helps our businesses be successful, is how I feel about it. But, I do see the angst from the local
Well, no, a
community, but
business shouldn't be able to use a private business shouldn't be able to just use a county park as their place of business. Go do like all the rest of us and rent a place where your business operates. I can't go down there and put up a rental booth.
yeah, and I'm not gonna die on my sword over this one, but I think a question that we have to ask ourselves is, so why are we using, what is our reasoning for using tourist development tax to improve Cessna Landing? What is the purpose of that, and what benefit do we see? I think you have to ask yourself that question at that point, because again, we have a fiduciary responsibility, and as we all know, that so much of the local population is not, these funds are very, very, are governed by the state and statute.
Yeah, the county came up where the TDC would pay to have a monitor down there. Well, I don't know what the monitor would do, but have it come from TDC funds to monitor the cluster that's developed down there.
I think the other part though is
I
to look
understand
at-
that was a suggestion, I'll be clear, that's
Yeah, okay.
not gonna comport with state statute.
Yeah.
So I do know that was a request.
Well, but it wouldn't have come up if it wasn't a problem down there. There's a big issue down there.
And I'll say this, the funding of boat ramps and improvement of boat ramps and maintenance of boat ramps is well within this council's purview to pull out of its TDC plan. Ms. Coble-Wise probably recalls may have been towards the end of your initial tenure. This issue came up quite heavily. There's a lot of debate about boat ramps because there were several that needed repair. And the gist of the TDC's direction was they didn't really think it was a good use of its time and money to fund boat ramp repairs that were being done and boat ramp improvements. At the time, the BCC disagreed. There was a dispute about the legality to the extent they wished to spend it. I was the TDC attorney at the time. I was not the county attorney. My opinion at the time, and I remain of it today, was that the scope of the proposal exceeded the original TDC use for those funds. The county attorney wrote an opinion and told the board they were welcome to do it, and they made a legislative finding that said it was consistent with the statute, and they chose to fund the money. If anybody wants to reverse that position, that is well within the purview of the boards and the appointed and elected officials.
No, but if you look at renting all of the back bay boats, all of the charter boats that are taking people fishing, red fishing and trout fishing in the bay, they line up at our 331 ramps, Cessna Landing, they're operators, and guess who meets them there? They're charter. And out there, great, I'm in the business, but we pay. We pay for where the boat is, and we pay, and our guests have a place to park their cars and use bathrooms. And we don't back a charter boat in to Cessna Landing and say, oh, come on down, hop on and park your car and have a free place to do business. That's all.
I think a bigger part of that goes into, again, the strategic plan of what's sustainable. So we know first and foremost that the people who come to this area are coming because they want to live like a local very much, and they feel tied to certain things that are unique to this area outside of others. But more importantly, we know that the trends are that people come for experiences. And so to what end are those experiences that will continue to attract them that we can also market? And so having that very in-depth strategic plan, I think, is extremely important, because it'll also go to what is the sustainability of being able to purchase land, maintain it, and then what does it truly become to the community and taxpayers, but then also to the tourists who want to be able to use it and should have expectation to use it.
Yeah, good point. Like buying land on the bay. The county buy land on a bay for a commercial marina. And then people that want to do business, they've got a place to rent. City of Destin, world's luckiest fishing village. No, it's not. There's no city marina. Every single boat is on a private owner's land. So the city charter fleet will end up being in Fort Walton and Niceville. But Pensacola has a city marina. Panama City City Marina. Perdido, Orange Beach, Biloxi. So I told the city, I said, find a place to have a marina in Destin for the charter fleet, for transients, and no, we're the world's luckiest fishing village. No, they're not.
Well, when you talk about, and again, we had these discussions back in the day, and my understanding has always been that there's issues with our ability to put a marina in. You talk about an asset that should be part of the long-term vision, a way to pull people off of the beach some
Right.
and help with that issue.
Yeah.
Because it was so funny, again, everybody knows I've been working hard with some fellow operators on this teen issue we've been having along 30A. And so I did a little focus group with my son and a few of his friends. And, if you ask those kids what the most underutilized asset for kids to experience down here, immediately they say bays and rivers. They
1000%.
love.
And that's what
they
I grew up doing.
love it. And that's what my kids
Yeah.
grew up doing. It's what I
Yeah.
grew up doing. And they were like, that's the biggest thing they're missing. And so
What's what? I missed it.
use of
experiencing the bays and the rivers and being able to get out. And a lot of them, talk about keeping them with their parents. They'll boat with their parents in a heartbeat, and happily. And so
If we want to reduce crowds, we want to reduce
it's
costs.
just, that is certainly, I think, when you talk about a long-term vision that would benefit this county and our tourism.
Sure would.
It would be huge.
Okaloosa Island, they're building a very large marina there, correct? I mean, right off of the
Private,
private,
big one.
right. But the water depth is a little bit different there
A
as
little,
well.
but yeah. The wakes, we've noticed there's no breakwater there, so if you've got a boat there and you see the traffic going by you, it's gonna be a rock, they ought to call it the Rock and Roll Marina, because that's what it's gonna be. Well, I'm really hopeful. I'm so optimistic, believe it or not, with our county commission. Not just for the tourism, but for a lot of other lifestyle issues that affect us all in the entire county.
Is there anyone from that would want to, should anyone provide public comment for this topic, or?
Yeah, is there anyone from the public? We have
Two? We have two.
two
Two.
that would like to weigh in on this.
I think you're missing the mark on social media interaction. Come on. I'll stand up then. I think you're missing the mark on social media communication with partners like vacation rental companies. In a matter of an hour, we probably get 25 emails. TDC must have probably used some of the last 3. Owners are emailing us about red taxes, VRBO, Airbnb, guests. I think social media is a huge platform of communication for interests, voting. Hey, what do you guys think about red taxes and how it's changing? You know, just any sort of, I just looked on the page, there's no Instagram page. Just saw Facebook.
We have Instagram.
Okay, what's the name? Yeah, no Instagram. I think Instagram's huge, and you take a vote. If you have a shop page, you gotta appeal to the audience, because there's a lot, I'm an old guy, and there's a lot of newer, and I own a short-term rental business, so, I'm very interested and very involved in what happens, you know, for us moving forward our business. Tourists, that's how I live my life, and I'm coming here. So any sort of, I would just say the communication to us and getting us information that you guys are talking about and you guys can push us to DCC. Try all the avenues, not just an email. I mean, I love seeing the best stuff on the social media pages, but I also love to hear this. And as business owners and entrepreneurs, we don't do this.
So there's 3 different, sorry, can I speak please? So you gotta remember there's.
It's informal, so however you
So
want to do
you
it.
gotta remember there is multiple ways we talk to people. You're not gonna see it on Visit South Walton on that Facebook page. That is not what that's meant for. The South Walton Facebook page with the little sun wave, that's meant for visitors. So we're never gonna put like crazy, yeah, something like that. So we do have a Walton County tourism page that we put all kinds of information, just like you're talking, every time we have a meeting, everything cool Brian's doing, anything cool, like even like during the snow when Brian was gonna close like beaches and bay accesses as far as bathrooms and stuff, we put all of that on Walton County Tourism. So that is there on the Facebook page. We did do a poll on when we were talking about what we wanted to set up, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you guys told us that Facebook and LinkedIn was where you guys wanted us to be because that was more for business than Instagram. So that's kind of where we are. But we do maintain Walton County Tourism, Facebook and Instagram page. South Walton, Authentic Walton, they have all of the things except for, I don't think, Authentic Walton doesn't have TikTok. Yeah. And we don't do much on TikTok anyway because legally we cannot. Legally we cannot do much on TikTok. We can't do sponsored posts or anything like that. And then Walton County Tourism, just because it's business to business is the way we looked at it, we did LinkedIn and Facebook. So we put all that information on there. It's not a private page. We could create.
Tax partners should have their own.
Well, that's, well, what
It's a
I
great
was gonna,
idea.
I think
what I was
that's-
fixing to offer was a group. That would turn into like,
How about a red tax partner page where all of this is just for us, and you guys still do your jam on social media, but for red tax partners, we get communicated to differently.
yeah, well, that's what I was gonna suggest. I was gonna suggest a Facebook group page where you can have, you admit, yeah, you admit people in. That's a little bit harder. An Instagram group page is a little bit harder than a Facebook page because it is mostly picture related. So, Facebook would be easier for us to manage a little
I'm
bit
just
more.
talking about it being information.
Yeah.
Not even, I don't, you know, it doesn't. The
Well,
social
Instagram CRMs tends to be picture heavy, because that's what it's meant
Yeah,
for.
you can take
Do
those.
graphic.
I'm just saying, I feel like there's
Do
a social
But
media.
we're,
Something's being
words.
missed with social media.
and then we also have the Walton County
Communications.
Tourism site. So the whole Walton County Tourism site has all of this information on there. There's other things, all of the team study that we were talking about, it's posted there. All of our research is posted there, and we're talking about the 2023, well, we have what we have for 2024 already posted there. We have lots and lots of information, including tourism talks, which is like, we have different things with, to help our partners who do that. Also, the quarterly partner meetings that I was talking about, those are posted on there so that you can see that. And that's a very good, useful site that you could put any kind of information like that on there. So we're trying to put as much up as we can.
Sure, and Kelly, shame on me, but
Sorry, I didn't mean to like,
Oh,
I'm
no.
definitely not trying to,
No,
shade
we-
what you're doing.
No, we literally
get
created,
bombarded with thousands of informational things, not just from you.
yeah,
From our other partners as event expert owners that we, have to deal with. So the little bit of information, I think the least amount of information and a quick answer.
Digestible.
okay.
Would be.
And I would love to make sure you get that. And the whole reason behind creating the Walton County Tourism Florida Facebook page was so that we could put the information out, because it didn't belong on Visit South Walton. It didn't belong on Authentic Walton. We wanted to get the good information out. So we're always willing to put up anything anybody wants me to, and figure out any other different way to communicate.
And the Rental Owners Alliance also, our Rental Operators Alliance also has a private Facebook page. I'll hit you up on that with some more information.
And Matt and I also put information there as well.
Yeah, perfect.
And I'm not trying to be the party pooper, sorry, but we have to take minutes for this workshop, so we really do need people to come and speak into the microphone, because we have to take minutes for the workshop. So we have to have people come to the microphone, say their first and last name. So I do need you to give us your first and last name, please.
Kelly Rich, KELLYRITC.
Thank you. Sorry, not trying to be a party pooper, just to follow procedure, sorry.
I thought it was a workshop, I didn't know.
Well, we still have to take minutes at a workshop. Yes, ma'am. Perfect. So do we feel like we've got a general direction there? Is there anything else you wanted to, we kind of had items 1 and 2, I think honestly kind of, bled into the same general conversation. I think, the only thing that, I may add for number 2 is, when we talk about the types of information that we present, do you all, prefer, for us to bring in, our agencies more often, the people we work with, the entities that, we provide funding for updates? Is there any, desire or, willingness for those types of updates, that type of information, or do you see that kind of living in a different venue space?
You mean like Zender?
Like Zender, Downs and St. Germain, Turner, all of our contracted agencies, and then also, like folks like David Vaughn at the Fire District, who, we provide funding to them. So would it be beneficial in any way for them to come in on a regular cadence to provide updates, just anybody that we fund dollars to?
I like the information, but I feel like a lot of times we get a slide deck, and then somebody just reads the slide deck. I mean, we can read it on our own, probably save a little bit of time, and
I
it's my
thi-
2 cents.
I think updates are really important. I don't care, I mean, I'll defer to y'all and how you receive them and how they're, we digest them. But I think that having a cadence of accountability is extremely important, and it provides, them to show those numbers and the same numbers on a regimented basis. And so we'll defer on how we receive that information. I do think at least one time a year there needs to be some type of presentation, because it's a lot of money, and it allows the public to see what is out there instead of it just being a document. But that is, to me, extremely important.
And why I bring that up is just, some of this predates my tenure, but, we've been told everything from, we want more information from your leadership team to, we want you to talk less. So, we just want to ensure that we're providing the balance of what you all want. Everybody in that building works incredibly hard at what they do, and so, we want to make sure we're still giving them the opportunity to, report out on what they're doing within their departments, but we also want to be respectful of your guys' time as well. So we just kind of want to find that balance.
I'll also say too, with the beach program, for me, it's really important to see those numbers, especially as a year over year, to see how successful the programs are, or if the information that we're having to provide to our guests proactively before they get here, so, you know, as you pack your bags, if that is actually being received by those guests, if they're taking it in, if they're making the necessary changes. Because truth of the matter is, again, if you look at it a year from now, there's probably going to be something that's brought up to the Board of County Commissioners. And so we'll have that information to say, but you made these changes, we've sent this information out, it's, you know, making changes, we've provided more lifeguards or whatever that may be. So I think it helps us in those future conversations.
Noted, appreciate it.
Anything else under number 2 we want to bring up? Additional topics?
I would like to know too, to your point, Amy, and this doesn't need to be all of our topics specifically to discussion, but if there are places in the community that we need to be seen at as the faces of tourism, then I'd like to know what those are on a calendar basis. So if that's something that you all can provide to us, that the TDC's involved, or we're spending money at something, or we need to have a representative there, I'd love to have what that calendar looks like.
Certainly, we can make that happen.
Anything else? We hit the boats. Talked about
Should we
the
hit-
marina.
The new ordinance?
I'm
Or can
renting
we talk-
pontoon boats this spring, so not really.
So we'll get to number 3, but let's just go ahead. Is there anything else generally that we want to talk about today before we hit the paperless technology? Any other topics that are hot?
There's
Seasonal?
gonna be some changes to the new ordinance, but I think that's,
Oh, that's a hugely hot topic, but I
Yeah,
don't think there's
but it's not.
anything that, I mean, I don't know how much.
yeah, I
mean,
agree. I just, yeah.
That's the biggest,
Short-term rental ordinance?
yeah, that's the biggest
Yeah,
concern that most of the
There
operators
weren't
have
too much
right now.
consulting with bed tax collectors, was there?
Right.
See, that's again, whatever information that somebody that's a county employee, and there's certain people that might live next to somebody, or they're trying to live their life here, but they're in a rental neighborhood, and then they just start working. Next thing you know, you've got something passed. And.
Any thoughts on what that should look like?
No.
Oh,
I have a lot of thoughts.
tons of thoughts.
I think
Well,
first
well,
the,
quiet time, and, you know, we have a noise ordinance, but certainly Walton County, you know, enforcing quiet time, 10 o'clock, whatever you're doing, go inside, have a good time. It's,
I think one of the biggest concerns of the upcoming changes that land planning is suggesting is the signage changes. So the size, and then also the requirement of the hotline number. I think there's going to be some pain points there. I know that, you know, we have a contract, their county has a contract with a compliance company, and they can have as many calls as they want. I've worked with these companies for years around the country, and that once you get flooded with calls, you'll start to see that contract change pretty dramatically, because they're gonna have to source individuals to take all those calls, and they may not get it on the first round of the contract, but they'll get it on the second. But I also think it's gonna cause major issues to our travelers and confusion to see a hotline number and your property number on there, because it's not a requirement of one over the other, and it shouldn't be. So I think that's gonna be a major problem. I think that, the fire and safety, which is a part of, you know, the state requirements, is not spelled out directly, and there's a lot of confusion there in terms of the permitting process. I think we're gonna hear a lot as it relates, you know, to some of those specific areas, and then, just some of the logistics as it relates to transferring, some of the permits over. But I do appreciate the local, aspect. So the term local, many places, the 1 hour, people may say a few things about getting there in 1 hour. That is an industry standard throughout the country, to say 1 hour, for a local, to
Well, even,
designate local.
in a community meeting yesterday, that was really between Alice, Seaside, they hold it, every quarter or something like that. The sheriff's department greatly prefers the management company's number on there
Correct.
because it just helped them so much to get, so they said we weren't having problems getting operators there in 30
Correct.
minutes to an hour because they're getting them on the other end of the
Right.
line. And, I just really see it as a service standard to our guests. And so-
Agreed.
Your number gets answered, I mean, with the.
Right. And to the point of having someone local and in 1 hour, are you gonna get that from a hotline that you call, or most likely, or are you gonna get that from someone who's required to be there in an hour? So which phone number would you prefer?
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know the proper, to answer your question there, Brad, or Commissioner Drake, I don't know the proper way to take the next step on behalf of what is a really, I mean, that was half of the entire Rental Operators Alliance meeting, was talking about the challenges that we are having. So maybe it's just starting back down the road with, going back in for a meeting with Josh. Everybody is always so complimentary. He does an amazing job. But there's problems even with the current existing ordinance. And then the second layer is these new changes that are coming, and nobody's standing up going, we do away with the short-term rental ordinance. We accept it, it's in play, but it could certainly, we could do some things a lot better than what we're currently, I think, doing, making it easier on everybody.
And then to add in, I know that there's gonna be some type of workshop over the monster houses, but, I think that's just something to keep an eye on.
Anything else?
Matt, anything on your radar that's coming down that we need to be aware of?
I mean, I
or things
think
we need to
everything
think
that-
about over the next 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that you all mentioned is obviously, A, point taken and appreciated, and things that, need to be on your radar. I mean, we've got strategic planning going, we've got, we're getting ready to start strategic planning. We'll be going out for RFP for our public relations services coming up here in the next year. I mean, those are really, from that standpoint, those items. But I do want to say, and I think to one of the points that, that Amy made is, we participate in this 30A Rentals Operator Alliance that Amy's really kind of the brainchild of, and kudos there. But, we thought this was something that was incredibly important for us to be a part of, because it allows us the ability to, basically in a lot of ways be a fly on the wall to kind of hear what people are talking about and what topics are, of concern to our partners and the bed tax collectors that are part of that. Do you happen to know off the top of your head, Amy, sorry to put you on the spot, how many entities we have represented in that group?
I have the spreadsheet printed to bring to this meeting, and, it's probably 20 companies and about 2,500, rentals to date that are represented in that group.
So I think to do a little bit what Amy was talking about earlier, it really kind of started out to address a singular issue, but what it's grown into is much larger than that, right? Kind of being a collective where industry folks can go and have the conversations. I know, to the point Amy made, there's a challenge for some of us here, because what we understand is Brian can't be there and Amy can't be there at the same time. So Brian has, somebody from his team represented, on those calls and at those meetings. So what I would say is, I think that's a tremendous opportunity for, other bed tax collectors, people in the industry to join on and be part of those conversations. We hold regular meetings, we talk about, any number of issues that are impacting the industry. And I think, that's just one more mechanism to, be able to have those conversations, but also to be able to communicate and share information. So if, like I said, I know Royal Destinations is represented, but for all of you, it would be very beneficial to have somebody from your agency represented on there. And what we kind of view this as, and Amy will correct me if I'm wrong, but we want this to be a place where, the operators who are trying to follow the rules and do things the right way go. One thing we've done is we've limited, the membership to that particular, Facebook group. We verify to make sure these are collectors and operators who are in good standing with the county, they're following the rules and doing all of that, and those things that they're supposed to be doing. So just another mechanism to get those communications out there.
Well, and dealing with 38 Escapes has also been very helpful, and it really was born out of a true intent and desire to be good neighbors in this community, to try and bring some of the angst between the locals and the tourism industry, better into line, and, working together. So I know another big one that's coming down the pike is the trash contract, so, that could have some pretty substantial impacts as well as currently written as we understand it, so a lot of big issues.
And I was just about to say the same thing. I mean, bigger picture, right? How awesome would it be for us to shift focus, not just on problems, right, but to opportunities out there? And trash has been one that's plagued our industry for years, having trash pickups, misaligned with turn days, right? And speaking of, I know we've all seen the transition in the marketplace over the last few years, kind of organically, partly because of COVID and partly because shifts in the market, but we've been on this Saturday turn day for 40 years.
That's when flights came in.
I mean, it's just as long as, right? It makes no sense, right? I mean, from a market standpoint or operational standpoint, it makes no sense. How cool would it be for us as a community and us as an industry to be able to start to shift the thinking on that, right? To engage our guests differently, where we can, we talk about trash, we talk about, traffic, we talk about all these kind of things, right? We can solve a lot of these problems, right? If we're proactive on, how we organize our calendars and whatnot. I mean, it's not gonna happen organically, right? With, one or two companies taking the initiative. It's gonna have to take a concerted market effort. I think it would be really cool if we, as a council, could, start to think about those kind of things, not just the challenges that are facing us.
Well, waste management, twice a week pickup is for a residential neighborhood. In a resort community, trash pickup should be 7 days a week. It's 7 days a week in Sandestin Resort, built into the dues, come around if it's out. You can't, Ocean Reef, we pick up the garbage when our house checks out, regardless of the day of the week. We have never, ever left a note. Well, we do push notices to an in-house guest to say garbage day is in the morning if you want to pull your can out, but they're in-house and that's a courtesy. But if someone checks out on a Wednesday, we'd have private companies and we pay to pick up the garbage at every house. Again, Walton County, that should be a requirement. If you want to be in the rental business and you want to rent a house, do not leave the garbage in the can from when someone checks out on Saturday, full cans, guest checks in, and most of these boutique companies are then telling that guest, oh, by the way, we're sorry your trash can's full. Garbage is tomorrow, do you mind pulling it out to the road? That should never be allowed. None of us would ever stay in a hotel where the garbage is in the corridor and say, oh, we're sorry, we don't pick it up till Wednesday. No, everybody that has a rental company here should have to pick up the garbage the day their guest checks out. We're in business. We're in hospitality business. But they don't. Go down Beach 98. It's not scenic, it's blighted 98. Because all the cans are out there blowing all around, trash all around. And of course, we have private companies coming, and then the police will stop us saying, well, you might be blocking the road or doing this or that. So we may start picking it up in an ambulance, I'm not sure. Thank you.
Oh,
An ambulance with a trailer.
oh, this has been good. Anything else? No, this is healthy. This is good. I mean, and what I was gonna say in closing, but I'll just go ahead and say it now before we do finish with the tablets, is that my goal is to make the TDC relevant again, to make that whenever those issues that come before the Board of County Commissioners, when they've been vetted by the TDC, that it has a brand associated with, like, okay, those are the best of the best, they work in that industry, they know what they're doing, and this is their recommendation, so it carries the maximum amount of weight possible. So I'm hopeful that maybe we'll get back in that direction to where, we ask you to volunteer your time, and then whenever you lend us your wisdom and knowledge, I want it to be well received and taken very seriously, and that it means something. So I'm hopeful. I think we've got a great group here. I look forward to working together with everyone. And very quickly, give us the 5 minutes on paperless technology?
1 minute or less. We just want to transition to tablets instead of paper booklets. We want to be more efficient with not only our resources and, our cost, but also our staff time. We think it's just quicker, more efficient, so when we have, 5 agenda item changes, we're not wasting a ton of paper, throwing it in the garbage. It's just easier for you all. We have money budgeted for the purchase of tablets, so we just wanted to make sure that you all were okay with us moving in that direction. Perfect.
All right.
28
That-
seconds?
That was
Thing
great.
on waste management, I didn't know if the contract was signed, but because we are a resort area, and we do have the 1% discretionary tax, but that's more for free garbage for those of us that live here. That was, I don't think, ever intended for the resort industry. But waste management, it would really be helpful, because we are a resort area, that they run a truck, a concierge service, even 7 days a week, down scenic 98 and then down 38, and just pick up what they see. And just say run, because it's a resort area.
How do we
Well,
make that ask?
Tell them,
Okay.
order it. No, I don't know. It's just other resort areas that, I mean, I didn't know if the contract had been signed.
Yeah.
But we're a resort area, so we
Have we-
should not have garbage
Has that been
flying all around.
has that been finalized?
Well, so they bid on an RFP, a request for proposal, and from that, was a contract was included in it. My understanding, there was a little bit of discussion or some tightening up of a few terms and conditions, but what he's asking for is a pretty big change to what the RFP said. Now, I'm not disputing, Tim has some good ideas about garbage collection, and some unique ideas about who should get free garbage and who should pay for garbage. But I think at this point, the waste management contract is somewhat finalized, and I don't wanna say that ship has sailed, but these ideas need to be brought forth with the managing department, and that would be the landfill department.
Okay.
Well, I mentioned
Solid waste.
waste management's nationwide, that other resort communities worked out arrangements where they have to make sure the resort community doesn't look like twice a week isn't enough.
Well, we've heard two different versions of finalized or not finalized, but originally it was reported that it was finalized and that we were legally gonna have to remove cans. They're not gonna pull the can out. I'm sorry. That they're not gonna pull the can out of the trash enclosures anymore. So in other words, take a community like Seaside, we would be responsible for going up and down every single street, setting the can outside of the enclosure so they could then pick it up and dump it. That's a bunch of hiring we're gonna have to do, because none of us are staffed to do anything like that. So I was gonna try and take that up, possibly even tomorrow, find out who I call to ask questions about the contract, is it finalized, so forth and so
The
on.
person called would be Billy McKee,
Okay,
the solid waste department director,
okay,
landfill guy. He'll have intimate knowledge of that and of the county legal, but I would start with Billy McKee. I
Okay.
don't have his number, but you can find it on the website.
I'll call.
Anything else?
No.
Seeing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. It was a marathon, but I felt very productive.